It's no secret. It's plain to see. I love you, and you love me. It's no secret.
Hi there, we'll get started in just a minute.
You know it's true. You love me. I love you. The only time we seem to meet is in the middle of the night. Only then can I feel your heartbeat. Till something's not right. Together I see you and me, always and all time. But not everyone would agree. To them it's a crime. It's no secret.
Hey there, okay, let us get started here. All right, welcome. Hello, I am Laura Zam, and this is Sexual Healing Central. I was on hiatus for a little bit. I had a kind of medical thing that I'll talk about in another episode. But I'm back with weekly shows every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so you can translate that for your time. And at Sexual Healing Central, we talk about sexual problems and solutions, making the conversation fun. Today, I want to talk about menopause as sexual awakening. And just a little FYI, I'm going to create a whole series around this because there is a lot to say about this topic. And many people who are, let's say, over 40 or especially over 45 have a ton of confusion around what's coming around the bend or what's already happening. So I really would like to spend some time clearing up that confusion, answering questions, and offering inspiration and hope. If you've not been here before, I'm your host, Laura Zam, and I'm a sexuality educator and also an author of a book called The Pleasure Plan, and that book was about my own sexual healing journey, which I happen to have started on the verge of menopause, dealing with 6 different types of sexual problems, including lots of different pain syndromes. Some of those related to menses, related to the stop of menses and low estrogen and all that fun stuff. Anyway, I want to talk about, as I said, menopause as sexual awakening today and give you some new ways maybe of thinking about menopause from a sexual or even erotic perspective. So before I get started, let me just address the elephant in the room, and that is menopause, sexual awakening. Isn't that counterintuitive? Isn't that a total paradox? Isn't that wrong? Don't people in women's bodies, don't we, dry up, and shrivel up and turn into crones and all that kind of thing? Isn't that what happens during this time in our life? Well, could be. I mean, a lot of things do happen, and I will get into that. But what I want to present to you today, and we're here usually for about 30 minutes, what I'd like to present to you is just a new way of looking at menopause and sex, even a new framework. And I want to give you, within that framework, or a way to really fully conceptualize it, I'm going to break things down into 5 different reasons why menopause can be a sexual awakening for women or for people who are in women's bodies or anyone who's going through menopause physically. All right. So the first reason is, I think, the biggest reason, and that is that menopause is already a crossroads from a sexual perspective. So essentially, nature does not want reproductive people, women, to reproduce past a certain age. The eggs are too old, and nature has designed it so that we're not going to become pregnant with these eggs that are not going to, let's say, be the healthiest offspring. And so what nature has equipped us, those who are women and people also, going through this sort of thing, it's equipped us with apparatus that works beautifully up until a certain time. If you have, for some people there are problems, obviously, but it's designed to work perfectly so that we can reproduce. But at a certain point, nature starts to take away one by one all of the things that would make this possible, even though we may technically still be able to get pregnant. So the vagina starts to close up, like literally close up. It gets narrow. It gets shorter. The walls of the vagina become dry and brittle. This is all because of lack of estrogen, but also other sex hormones, especially testosterone, that also has a big effect on our lady parts, as we say. So all of this is happening in terms of the vagina closing. We also have different kinds of pH. We have a different pH in the vagina so that it's now more inhospitable to sperm. We've got lots of different things going on where the vagina and the vulva are just like, okay, no, this isn't gonna be, we're gonna make this more difficult. So there's no incentive to conduct activities, let's say sex, that would lead to pregnancy. So this is happening whether we want it or not, whether we want to be sexual or not. These changes are happening to our bodies. And so that point number one, that reason number one is, look, you are already at a crossroads. Nature is telling you, nope, don't have sex. Don't have sex. So it's like if you've got a kind of stagnant sexuality, sexual dynamic, let's say, in your relationship that can go on for years and years and years because nothing is really forcing it to change. This is the thing that's going to force it to change, because you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision after menopause whether you want to be sexual. If you don't decide to be sexual, then, like I said, vagina's going to close up. Those walls are going to come in. Everything's going to get dry, brittle. It's going to become impossible to those tissues to get them really healthy so that they're not brittle, so that sex is not painful. There are great remedies, and the gold standard is to use topical estrogen. Topical will mean in this case that you're applying it directly to the area, and usually that's a cream or a suppository that you put inside the vagina. And those work beautifully, and they're extremely safe. I know a lot of people are scared of hormones, and in another episode, I'll just deal with safety around hormones, but they are very, very safe. And that is the gold standard, and it does allow us to have comfortable and pleasurable sex into our later years. But we have to make a decision to go to the doctor to get this kind of cream or suppository, get the prescription. We have to make a decision to have sex. So the crossroads is, I think, fabulous for us because it's forcing us into a decision. If you've been in a partner and you haven't made love in 4 years, right, that can just kind of go on 5 years, 6 years, right, with no repercussions necessarily, right? It could be, okay, well, maybe we'll start having sex again at another point. But if you're in perimenopause or you're in menopause, you don't have the luxury of time. So you have to make a decision if you're going to have sex. And that's why I say that crossroads can be fabulous because it forces us to decide, do I want to be sexual now and even for the rest of my life? All right, the second reason why menopause is a sexual awakening or can be a sexual awakening is because of the pain that many people feel, pain with intercourse or other forms of penetration. It used to be estimated that about 50% of women experience this pain. But now doctors are saying it's actually a lot more than that. It's just hard to gauge because most women don't bring this up with their doctors. And unfortunately, most doctors don't bring it up with patients. They're not asking us, hey, oh, I see you're 51, you're 52 or 46. Is intercourse painful, uncomfortable for you? Doctors are not necessarily trained to do that. And so what can typically happen is that the pain kind of, it just, it starts slowly. We may not notice it at first. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And many people don't mention this to their partners. They may go a year, even more, with this kind of pain. And then finally they may bring it up and finally go to a doctor and talk about that. That to me is unacceptable, right? That we should just live in this painful state and grin and bear it and organize sex around just, let's say, somebody's ejaculation, and not to really be able to embrace this experience as something that's supposed to be not just comfortable, but pleasurable for us. And I will talk a lot about that in future episodes, going into some real details about how we can make that happen if it's not happening right now. But anyway, the pain is going to force us to start talking to our partners, start talking to our doctors. So point number one, or reason number one is, right, it's forcing us to consider, okay, do I want to, right, have sex for the rest of my life, or at this point in my life, forcing you to have a decision, make a decision. But point number two is it forces you to start having conversations. Because if you do want to have sex, you're probably going to have to talk to your doctor and get a prescription for this topical estrogen. No, so that's a whole conversation now. And as you're using this for the first time, you may want to refrain from having intercourse. So that's a whole conversation now you're having with your partner. Hey, by the way, I actually been in pain for, 4 months, 2 years, what have you, right? So we're starting to have these conversations and we're bringing people into our healing with us. Great opportunity. Great opportunity. Hey, our doctor's right there. We can start asking questions beyond just the cream, right? What about my libido? Is there anything that can help my libido? Is there anything else? How might my sleep or hot flashes, how might those be affecting my sexual health, right? All kinds of conversations, talking to our friends. So many of us don't have conversations with our friends at this time in our life, or maybe until this time in our life. So, as young women, as young girls, we talk about sex and boys and right first experiences or crushes and all that sort of thing. But that often shuts down. Once we especially partner, we don't want to talk to our friends about sex necessarily because it feels like a betrayal of our partners, right? To confess to our girlfriends that I'm not that attracted to him anymore, or I don't like the way he does certain things, right? You hear me? So a lot of us just don't really talk about this. Also, we're ashamed. We're ashamed that the sex that we're having is not as good as what we imagine our friends are having, or like it is on television, in the movies. And so we're ashamed. This is very vulnerable aspect of our lives. So we're ashamed to share this. But once we get into menopause, we do start to share, a lot of us do start to share this with our friends because it's like, wait a minute, did you get some kind of a prescription from your doctor? Didn't you tell me you were getting a prescription from your doctor? What was that? Because I want to ask my doctor for this prescription, right? Often we start to open up ourselves, open up our ability to discuss this with our friends and get support and get information. I was part of a Facebook group. It's evolved now, and it's no longer quite in existence, but it was called What Would Virginia Woolf Do? And it was started by a wonderful woman named Nina Collins, and she started this group as a way to talk about her own menopausal symptoms. And it just blew up to, I think, 20 or 30,000 women who wanted to talk about this. And then it grew also in terms of topics that people wanted to talk about, but it was women, middle-aged women over 40. A lot of the discussion was around menopause and all the different things that we were curious about and confused about and wanting support and information from our peers. So like I said, the pain is a great opportunity to start getting information, great information and customized information for you to continue. All right, so the third reason that menopause can be a sexual awakening, and let me just say this about halfway in here, that I'm always very open to anyone jumping up on the stage. So just send an invite if you'd like to come on up and ask any questions, or you can throw those into the Q&A part here. So let's continue here. There we go. All right. So yes. So now the third reason here is that it is a time for us. The pain also offers this other great opportunity for us. It doesn't seem like that necessarily at the time because it's no fun to start having pain. And if you've never had that before, my own situation, and I wrote that book I told you about, The Pleasure Plan. I had pain since the first time I tried to have sex when I was 17 years old. I had a condition called vaginismus, but I didn't get a diagnosis till I was in my very late 40s. So I went 30 years without understanding why I had pelvic pain. But most people are not in that situation. They've been able to have pain-free sex until these menopausal years start. And but the pain is also an opportunity because it forces us to reimagine what lovemaking is. In a heterosexual sexual encounter, often there is a script that people are following. Let's say foreplay and then intercourse, right? That's a common script that people follow and don't tend to veer from it very much. But if intercourse is painful or penetration for those who, right, their practice does not involve intercourse. If that penetration now is painful, then it forces you to start to be imaginative about what else can I do sexually if it's not going to be this thing that's always, let's be honest, really defined what sex is, right? Sex is intercourse for many, many people. It's like, when Bill Clinton was found to have had perhaps, right, this dalliance with Monica Lewinsky, or the intern at that time, right? He famously said, "I did not have sex with that woman," right? And then he said, when he was accused of lying, he said, "I was not lying because I didn't have intercourse with her," right? It's ingrained to this day. That wasn't just something from the 90s. We societally think of sex as intercourse in a heterosexual situation. But sex can be so much more than that. And menopause is a great time and opportunity to say, well, what else could it be? Right? What else could it be? I like to talk about something called tapas sex. And so foreplay, I think of foreplay and intercourse as like an appetizer and a main dish. Let's kind of sequence this kind of meal. But tapas sex is a different meal structure. Rather than having this sequence and this like light thing to eat and then the heavy main meal, it's lots of small dishes. So tapas sex means that you can do lots of different things with your partner that don't have to include penetration. It can certainly include orgasm if that's something that's important to anyone in the room. But you can be creative with your partner or partners and figure out, okay, well, what is that going to look like? How can that happen without me being in pain? Now, sometimes when we first discover that there's been pain, we go to the doctor, we get the prescription, but it takes a little bit of time and experimentation to get things just so that there is no pain. So in that interim time, especially, you don't want to exacerbate the situation and continue having intercourse or penetration, because it's going to make the muscles go into kind of overdrive and basically cause like a secondary kind of pain that can happen. So it's best to figure out sexual practices that are not going to cause any pain. And guess what? Those sexual practices may be something that are fantastic. Maybe you never orgasmed, right? Maybe a person's never orgasmed through intercourse. They never really even found it that exciting. But now it's like, if sex is not all about that, and let's say pleasing my husband or pleasing my partner so that they can, right, do this one thing to me, if it's now just everything's on the table and we're on the table and we can do all kinds of things, and we can now do things that are going to be equally pleasurable to me. Wow. That's what I found in my journey. I found that when I started to say to myself, ask myself, what do I want in bed? I'd never really asked myself that. I just kind of went along and tried to make things as pleasurable as possible, or, tried to not even make it as pleasurable as possible, but just go along and hope that it would be pleasurable. And there was pain, and it often didn't really satisfy me because I didn't know how to ask for things that would really work with how my body works in that way. I found that, wow, now that I started to advocate for myself, that I could design sex with my husband, redesign sex, reimagine it, and then define it so that it did suit me, suit my pleasure. 50% is my pleasure, 50% is his. Much more equal, much more equitable, much more, kind of intimate justice, people call it, right? That's intimate justice. All right, couple of other things to end with here. So, um, all right, so menopause is also a crossroads. This time in our lives, rather, is a crossroads in other ways as well. Some people are empty nesters now, or there may be retirement for some people. There's other things that are going on, other transitions that could lend themselves to creating a new sexual relationship with a partner, or even with, out in the world, if you want to, start dating, start to explore sexual adventures and partners and relationships, right? So I think we can use this natural transition, just as I said, we're going to use the fact that it's our bodies are transitioning this way. We can use the fact that our lives are already transitioning this way to say, well, what do I want? Do I want to date? Do I really want a partner? Do I want a passionate sex life with my husband or my wife or my partner, right? We can now say, all right, well, kids are out of the house, or we've got more time on our hands, or we were able to buy that, right, that cabin in the woods, or whatever it is that's part of this transition. How might we use this? How might I use this to foster these intimate relationships and make the ones that I have the best possible, or put myself on a path so that I can find a relationship that is what I really crave. All right, the last point here is that there is a kind of urgency that happens when we get to be this age, because, well, we don't have as much time, and that becomes more apparent, I think, to us when we are, right, when we're starting to get older in this way. We're losing our ability to have children. We're reminded that, okay, we're at a new stage in our lives now. We are closer. We are closer to the end of our lives, as much as we, don't want to think about that, don't want to talk about that as a society. It is very, very true. And I'll share a little story here, a little anecdote to kind of end us here, because I just love this. So my mother was a Holocaust survivor. She unfortunately lived through, well, not unfortunately that she lived, but she suffered through concentration camps and Nazi ghettos and a death march. And my mother was very, very life affirming. She loved life, and she never, ever, ever for a moment forgot what a gift it was because of what she'd been through. But anyway, my mother's favorite expression, was, she'd say, kind of like this, she'd say, "Get it." And so this was preceded by, I'd say, "Oh, I think I want to," even when I was a little kid, "I really want that doll," or "I really want to be friends with this person," or, my mother would go, "Get it, get it," And so I really took that to heart. I took advantage of it because she was like, go, let's get the doll now, live. And it took me a long time to realize what the other part of this was, because my mother would say this only after saying something that I thought was very morbid, which was, she'd say, "I could be dead tomorrow," right? "I could be dead tomorrow." So I hated when she said that. But then she'd say, "Get it," So the two were intricately connected. Right? I could be dead tomorrow, so let's do it. Let's go and get the doll now. So I grew up with that, right? Grew up with both of these, but I kind of denied the "I could be dead tomorrow" part, because it just was too scary. And I was just like, I put that out of my mind and just focused on the "get it." But, recently I've really seen how that equation has got to have those two parts, because that urgency and that vibrancy and that I'm grabbing that brass ring, it really is inspired by the fact that we don't have much time, or we don't know how much time that we have. That sweetness and that joy and that joie de vivre is all dependent on this other knowledge that we've got, all the way back here, that this could end at any point. So don't want to belabor that aspect of it, but just to say that in menopause, as we are reminded through these body changes, reminded of our mortality, it is an opportunity for us to that brass ring, whatever that is for us. And if a vibrant, wonderful, passionately intimate, pleasurable, equitable, healing sexual relationship is something that you want to get, well, this is a good time to start on that path. Thank you so much for being here with me. I've got a whole new setup today. I've got this new sign, the Sexual Healing Central sign. As I mentioned, for those who've just joined us here, I'm going to be doing a long series just on menopause and sex. If that's of interest to you, because that's your body or that's your partner or any other interest, please continue to join me. I will be here weekly every Thursday at 4:30 Eastern Time. Thank you again, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.